Welcome to Safety Spectrum, your environmental health and safety connection. This program is a presentation of the Michigan Safety Conference. For almost a century, the annual conference has provided credible educational opportunities and valuable support to the safety and health practitioner by offering 120 instructional programs along with exhibits highlighting the latest in safety equipment, instrumentation, and demonstrations. To learn more about the conference, please find us at safetyconference.org. Welcome to Safety Spectrum. I'm your host, Sheila Ida of the Michigan Safety Conference. Our program today is Ergonomic Impact on Back Injuries. This program is sponsored by Cults Excavating Company, an underground utility contractor serving the largest energy companies throughout the state of Michigan. Cults Excavating lives by their motto, "We dig safety," by providing a culture where employees want to work safely and believe safety comes from the heart. As it has been for many years, one of the most prevalent injuries and illnesses, especially in certain industries, are back-related incidents. Are we doing everything we can to identify and mitigate the hazards involved? What should we and can we be doing differently? My guest today, Dr. Robert Fox, Ph.D., has over 40 years' experience in the field of ergonomics, human factors, and physical anthropology, and is both an HFES, Human Factors and Ergonomics Society, and IEA Fellow. While at GM, he supported all aspects of ergonomics in manufacturing operations as the global subject matter expert for occupational ergonomics. He chairs the HFES Technical Standards Division and is active on the International Standards Organization for Ergometry and Biomechanics. He is also a member of the ACGIH Physical Agents Committee. He has authored journal articles on manual material handling, the revised NIOSH lift equation, work-related musculoskeletal disorders, and ergonomics and aging. Oh, say it isn't so. Dr. Bob is currently a lecturer at the Department of Industrial Operations for the University of Michigan and for the University of California, Berkeley for occupational and environmental health. Welcome to Safety Spectrum.
Thank you, Sheila.
So
Thank you
first
for
of
the
all,
generous introduction.
yeah, even though I screwed up one of the words, it's fine.
That's okay.
So what do you do now? I mean, after GM, it's life worth living, you know?
Oh, yeah. Well, I tell you, I've been busier than what I thought it would be. I've continued to work in ISO ergonomic standards, so that takes a lot of time. I serve as the chair of the Technical Standards Division for the Human Factors and Ergonomic Society. And so those things take up a lot of time. I've been doing some other things. I've been teaching, part-time teaching for the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor. There's a course there that I've taught in the winter, although I won't do it this next year. And I've also taught workshops in a virtual class out of the University of California, Berkeley on ergonomics. Now, there are other little odds and ends of things that I've done as well. I've been on a couple of special projects with the Department of Labor and the Department of Justice, and also working for as an expert for the state of Washington on some ergonomics issues.
So you just
So,
can't get away from it, huh?
yeah. Well, if you remember in, well, I think it was the Godfather Part 2, the Al Pacino character says, "I want to get out, but they keep pulling me back in." It's kind of like that, but it's all stuff that I enjoy. I mean, it's a
Well, keeps
profession,
our brains active, right?
right, and the
I
people that I absolutely love.
Oh, that's great. Okay, let's set the definition right from the start. What is ergonomics?
Well, there is a variety of ways to define ergonomics, and there are some definitions that go on for paragraphs. But the definition that I most like is one that was used by the joint program between the UAW and GM in their joint program on ergonomics. And it is ergonomics is an interdisciplinary field of study that is concerned with the design of products, processes, and environments for safe and effective worker use. Now, that would be occupational ergonomics, which is ergonomics applied to the workplace, to the work that people are doing. If you substitute human for worker, that really covers all aspects of ergonomics. You know, ergonomics in airline transport, ergonomics for the aging, ergonomics in healthcare, you name it. It's a very broad field.
We all have our challenges, no matter what industry you're in. I know that a lot of UAW folks were ergonomists, and I think there was
Yes.
actually a physician that was part of the UAW group out of GM, but I can't remember his name right offhand.
Yes, yes. And I'd say in the big three, I give the UAW a lot of credit.
Yeah.
I think going back into the 1980s, the early 1980s, it was the UAW folks who really pushed it. And the companies that started with some things and they kind of caught on. It was a joint program, joint between the UAW and management. And it was a long process. It had its fits and starts, but it proceeded, it matured, and they developed and continue to develop and refine their programs. So they have done a lot of work in this area, and I say God bless those folks for everything they've done, and for the joint spirit between management and union,
Takes a
and
village.
addressing the oh it does and addressing these issues.
Well, I'm going to assume a relationship between ergonomics and back injuries. How big a
Okay,
problem is
okay.
it? Our back
Well,
injuries.
back injuries have been for many years a big issue, a big problem. And we can look at all sorts of different statistics. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics, for example, going back to 2022 and 2023, says that essentially about 18% of all workplace injuries are related to the back. And if we look at musculoskeletal disorders and injuries, it probably accounts for about 38% of those. And this involves over 250,000 workers a year that have some degree of back injury. The average time off from work is about 10 days. And as far as the costs go, I don't have a recent cost number. There are indirect and direct costs associated with back injury, looking at things like lost time, productivity, workers' compensation insurance, etc., and then also the pain and suffering
Yeah.
of the worker and medical care. But it runs into many billions of dollars.
And it seems like it's something chronic. It's hard to cure in a lot of situations, or the work
Yes,
doesn't really change and you go right back to it.
yes, it can be a chronic issue, very much so. And we do know now there are a lot of causes and contributors to back pain and back injury. And we do know that there is a linkage between what people do as part of their job physically every day and the types of back injuries that they get.
Would you, I mean, maybe just put you on the spot a little bit, but how much do you think is mechanical, you know, something not working right, or it's physical issues that cause these injuries?
When we talk about physical issues and mechanical issues like what are you referring to?
Like, what are the things that that it's the way the machine is set up,
Oh,
and then
okay.
physical that some people just are, their weight or age or what have you might have
Okay,
an impact on it.
we know those are contributors. Now, our main focus is really on I would say, the mechanical aspects of the task. That is, what it is they have to lift or manipulate, how much it weighs, how big is it, how far away from the body is it, where do they pick it up from, where do they put it down. So those are the various mechanical or architectural aspects of the task, that we can deal with. Now, we do know that things such as that we can call them individual factors. These would be things related to the health of the individual, to their physical capabilities. Some people are very strong, other people aren't, etc. Their physical size, the individual factors. That plays a role as well. But first and foremost, we want to address those physical factors. Now, there are other factors as well. Maybe we can get into that a little bit later on.
Mhm, mhm.
But in any sort of a injury prevention program, an ergonomics program, looking at lifting and looking at injuries from manual material handling, we want to address those physical factors. We want to reduce the risk due to those factors as much as we possibly can. And if I can also say, we're focusing on lifting injuries. When I say manual material handling, that's anytime a worker is lifting, lowering, carrying, pushing, or pulling. So those tasks as well, we take a look at, like the pushing of things like dollies and carts.
Okay, makes sense. When I was going to college, I was probably 100 pounds, 5'3", and they worked at a bakery in Grand Rapids, and they would pair me with somebody who was like a foot taller than I was,
Yeah,
lifting trays. It's like,
yeah,
really? Didn't hurt myself at the time because I was in shape, but hey, see how those factors figure into everything.
yeah.
So, what are the approaches based on ergonomics to minimize these kind of injuries?
Well, there are various things that we can do. First and foremost, I think that there needs to be an ergonomics program. There needs to be awareness and how lifting and manual handling jobs are designed. Okay, first and foremost, we kind of take a look at that. What are the parameters of the tasks involved? What are the risks involved? Now, in order to do that, that necessarily requires some degree of training in recognizing man material handling hazards and being able to engineer and design them out, being able to design safe tasks. So that means essentially everybody should be involved. You know, all of management, engineering, supervisors, workers, the union, health and safety in particular, health and safety function, again, and being able to recognize those hazards and design them out. I look at this kind of in an all-inclusive manner, that ergonomics, isn't just the job of a certain person over here, that it's really comes down to everybody if we want to address these hazards in the workplace and reduce or eliminate them. And so I think that a program has several different aspects to it. It has the aspect, if I go back, for example, the UAWGM program, or the program that was used in the other automotive manufacturers, the way they got their start. First of all, they worked with the University of Michigan. They introduced a checklist. They had awareness training. They trained a cadre of people to go in and start to look at jobs and to identify risks that then could be fixed. Then on the other standpoint, there was a big move in engineering, in like industrial engineering and manufacturing engineering, to be aware of those ergonomic risk factors and to design them out in the design stage of the job, so more proactive. So we have the two sides kind of working together. So a lot depends on worker awareness as well, to be able to, to recognize and have lines of communication, to management, to identify and eliminate material handling risks.
Yeah, it seems like some of the programs back in the day, I go back a few years, they really never asked the employee what worked for them. And I always thought that was kind of short-sighted. Maybe an engineer
Yeah,
sitting in a room
yeah,
designing a warehouse
yeah,
setup
yeah.
and never even asking the folks. And unfortunately, we do kind of go towards the convenience side of things. So if it's easier to do it that way, even though it might hurt us. So I think it's key when you said about teaching employees, workers to recognize when they're putting themselves at risk.
Absolutely. There needs to be both a top-down element, top-down meaning the involvement and the of management, and a bottom-up from the workers as well, so that everybody is involved in that way. But there has to be definitely that commitment and the allocation of resources from management in order to make it happen.
Have you ever seen something where they put in a program and it just didn't work? You thought it would be everything and it just didn't work.
I can't really say that I have, but I can think of some reasons why that may occur. One is perhaps um, the goals of the program are unrealistic. Okay, as of next week, there are going to be no more back injuries. Well,
Okay.
no, it takes time. It takes a long range commitment, and it takes time to affect changes. And if people are expecting changes too quick, well, no, that didn't happen in a month. We had increased claims, so therefore the program isn't working. Then I'd say no, you've got to be more realistic about your goals, and you've got to think long term. I mean, that's what happened. It took a number of years before we saw meaningful reductions in back injuries, in the automotive and in other industries that have gone into, ergonomics programs.
Yeah, it seems like don't they say increased awareness when you start teaching people, then more things get reported.
Yeah.
So it seems like
Yes.
there's an uptick when it really isn't. They just weren't
Yeah.
recognizing it before.
Yes, yeah, and that's kind of a problem too, that with many ergonomics related injuries, musculoskeletal disorders, and I've been involved in some NIOSH activity on this as well, and the suspicion is there are still a lot of injuries and illnesses that go unreported, and for various reasons. Maybe workers, oh, I'm getting older, this is just something I have to put up with, or there may be fears about losing their job, or other issues involved. Why why they may not report an injury or an illness. That
And I
has been
know
a
OSHA
concern.
tried to address that with the way trying to get people to report more, but I do know
Yeah.
that, especially in construction, you get some older workers and they aren't necessarily going to say that they can no longer do what they've been doing for the last
Hmm.
30, 40
Hmm.
years. So that
Yeah.
is a problem. Yeah. So, what are some of the ergonomic tools or methods used to assess the lifting tasks that we're talking about?
There are a variety of different tools out there. Now, I have to say up front that most of my experience has been with the Nash lift equation, specifically the revised Nash lift equation, the RNLE. It is probably the most used ergonomics tool in the world. And it assesses lifting tasks. It can assess most types of lifting tasks. And what it does is it looks specifically at the different parameters of the lift, such things as how far away from the body something is when it's picked up, where the origin of the lift is, where the destination of the lift is, the coupling involved, the asymmetry, and also the frequency of the lift. Now, the RNLE there have been hundreds of articles on the RNLE, many of which I've looked at, and I've written some on the RNLE also. It's a very good tool for industry to use to be able to evaluate lifts. And specifically, I wrote a paper on how the RNLE should be interpreted. And that was based on a review of epidemiological studies going back about 25, 30 years, nearly. And it is also a fairly good tool for job design. And also I want to point out that it has extensions to it. There are versions of the RNLE that can be used to study highly variable lifting, like what we might have in warehousing. Also looking at aspects of job rotation, which is fairly common now, and the ability to look at a worker performing multiple tasks. So the RNLE is a good job design tool as well as a risk assessment tool because its output metric, it's the value of its lift index or composite lift index or variable lift index has implications for the amount of risk involved. And it's fairly easy to use, and there are apps out there now for it as well, which you can use. Now you have to know how to take the measurements for it. There are increasingly videographic computer vision methods out there that will do some of that automatically. Those are still being perfected, but they will be a very, very good tool for many of our ergonomists. Now, in addition to the RNLE, there are some other tools that have been used. There are the Liberty Mutual tables on material handling, and just a few years ago, some people from Liberty Mutual, the insurance company, when they still had their research labs, and Dr. Jim Potvin of Canada, um, took those tables and turned them into equations, which makes it a lot easier to use. So they are a good resource to use out there. There's some other tools. There is the LIFFT, the lift tool that is based on something a little bit different, fatigue failure theory, that makes it possible to assess risk of all the lifts that a worker may do in a day. And it's very easy to use. There's only a couple of measurements that go into it. The ACGIH, the American Conference of Governmental Industrial Hygienists, has a lift TLV that's available as well. And then there are a number of other tools. There's some tools used internationally. I think of the MAC that came out of the UK that's used in Australia. It's somewhat similar in some ways to the RNLE. To look at acceptable lifting loads and lifting limits. Also, I want to point out there's probably any number of folks out there that use digital human models to assess lifting, particularly if you've got odd postures and all. And they'll look at strength demands, and they'll also look at compressive forces on the back. And for example, previously the University of Michigan 3D static strength prediction program, which was used for that, and that's also been used by the automotive companies to also look at some aspects of material handling, particularly if the RNLE did not apply to it.
That's what I would wonder how much this takes the physical characteristics of the person. How does that play into the whole?
Yes, the physical characteristics of the person can certainly play into it. And this is another aspect of ergonomics that I think is very important. And I think we've had increased attention to it and its relevance over the past number of years. We know that human beings are very versatile and we're very variable. Looking at age, height, weight, physical strength, body proportions, etc. And that's good. But it also raises a question, well, okay, who do I design to? for this particular job, I want to be able to accommodate a range of people.
Mhm.
And I want to be able to accommodate, the people maybe that also have the lower capacity. So we would like to have a job that would be acceptable to about at least 75 to 90%, of the working population, at least that
Hmm.
much.
Is that
And we can
possible?
kind of do that. Well, yes, it may or may not be easy. And the RNLE allows us to do that, as do some of the other tools, such as the Liberty Mutual equations. So
Okay.
we can take into account capability and capacity. And that's also very important to understand, in ergonomics, is that diversity that's out there naturally, among our workers. We don't want to put the tall people at risk. We don't want to put the short people at risk. We want to accommodate as large a percentage of the population as we can. So that's why if we look at strength demands on a job, generally we go to, well, we want maybe, at a 25th percentile female strength, then that accommodates about 99% of the males as well, to at least be able to accommodate that degree.
Seems like supervisors are always asking, like, well, how much can they safely lift? And I go, well, that's
Yeah, yeah.
relative. I mean, you can't.
Yeah, I understand
They
that.
want that, black and white.
Yeah,
It's
okay,
not that way.
okay, how much is it? 30 pounds or
Right,
32 pounds
right.
or 25 pounds or 22 pounds? And I always say I can't really give you a blanket answer on that. Now, there
Right.
are any number of of published regulations and guidelines in different countries that have said, okay, for young people, they can lift no more than this. For other people, they can lift no more than this. And those are rather problematic. I
I would
always
say that's a
say,
slippery slope right
yeah,
there.
it's a slippery slope. If you want to define a maximum weight for a particular job, then I'd say apply a tool to it. Take into account what the parameters of the task are, to define what a maximum weight is. Now, I can think in particular over my years at GM and in the automotive industry, looking at manually delivered containers. Well, how much should they be? There were two questions. Well, how heavy can it be, and how many can they deliver in an hour? And I
Okay.
said, well, it all kind of depends. If you've got, if you've got a moderate weight and you've got a good setup where people can avoid the bad postures as they lift, they can probably do a bit more. And at one time we were given a certain weight value, and I said, well, we're going to have to try and live with that, and that maximum should not be the average. It needs to be lower. So as time has gone on, those maximum acceptable limits as far as weights as a design limit has kind of come down, to maybe about 25 pounds. And that is given the other aspects of the design of the task,
Right.
where they pick it up from, how big it is, where they put it down.
Yeah, I had an accident early in my career where a worker was lifting heavy bags of cement. So a bag is a terrible thing to try to lift, doing
Yes,
it
yeah.
all day from one spot to another. Well, they blew out their back basically.
Yes.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
there's just some things that we should not be doing or thinking through, I think.
Yeah.
So, how effective is lifting training in controlling back injury?
Lifting training is something, I mean, there's been interest in lifting training for decades. And the research in this area, and I remember back in 2019, when I wrote my one article, and we looked at aspects of lifting training. Lifting training, that is training people on a correct way to lift, has not really been shown to be effective in reducing back injuries. For one thing, what they're trained in, they may not be able to do, and it may not necessarily apply to what all it is that they're lifting. Now, I like to take a different view of lifting training, which is more of the worker. Now, of course, there are some aspects of safety that workers should be trained in the lifting that they do. Can they get safe coupling, adequate coupling on the object to be lifted? Is there anything else that they have to take into account that may be a hazard? And I think that training should emphasize the identification of material handling hazards in the workplace. Okay, we've got this certain load in a certain place. it's going to be too much for one person to do. Can we get mechanical assistance? Can we use team lifting? Uh, Team lifting, generally, a lot of people say we want to avoid it, but sometimes it's unavoidable, looking at construction. So that's why I've kind of worked on guidelines for team lifting. And the military has been very interested in that as well. So if that training addresses recognizing manual material handling aspects and basic safety aspects of it, I think that's good. And just not be dependent on, okay, well, this is a safe way to lift, and oh, that should take care of our problem, because it doesn't. Now, if I could also address the aspect of some training, like physical fitness, stretching, things like that, I would have to say for the most part, it can't hurt. And again, the role of things like physical conditioning and physical fitness, and its role to material handling injuries is not really clear. Some of the papers that I reviewed over the years, looking at, for example, for firefighters, if they were in shape, if they had gone through a physical conditioning program, they weren't necessarily injured less often than other workers, but they seem to be able to recover quicker, and their injuries weren't as severe. So there can be a role for things like fitness.
Yeah, I think it's part of it could be the culture of the company too. If they
Yeah,
encourage or provide, like a lot of firefighters do have physical or have a gym or something
yeah,
attached to it
yeah,
because a lot of their downtime, that's what they're doing. They're working to stay in shape and they really need to be, but you can't force people. I tried some exercise programs with one place I worked for a particular job where they had to do a lot of jumping in and out of the truck and lifting and carry that type of
oh
thing. And we
yeah,
tried to do a
yeah.
little session in the morning where we'd have the stretching, and some of the people that didn't do it found it quite hilarious. So
Mm-hmm.
the culture was
Mm.
not there, so that kind of died out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's another thing with the culture of the workplace, and what the workers think about it,
yeah.
and all, if it's going to be a success.
Well, we
Some
try to
places
use
it is, other places it isn't.
Yeah, you try to use the professional athlete argument. Football players don't go out there and just start running around throwing the ball around. They're stretching, but it doesn't fly. It doesn't work. It doesn't
Yeah,
translate. So I
yeah,
think you hit it on the head. You've got to train people to recognize the hazard of what they're
right.
doing, like you do in any job. You really do. So that makes more sense. So what should number one companies and workers do to minimize these injuries?
Yeah, I'd say first is awareness. And as I kind of mentioned before, I think the involvement of all parties, safety, engineering, the workers, the union, management at all levels, to come together and acknowledge that it is an issue and figure out what to do about it. Starting with training of everybody involved, recognition of what is causing those injuries, looking at their illness injury records to identify just exactly what's going on. I think many companies, and I understand, you get the big companies, the big automotive companies, they have a lot of resources. You get the smaller and medium-sized companies, and those folks, they have people, safety people. There's a seminar that I teach, that I help teach at the University of Michigan, that's directed to smaller and medium-sized Michigan companies, and it's all about giving them awareness in ergonomics and what they can do. So they have people that wear multiple hats, and the thing is, if everybody buys in on it and recognizes that there's a problem, and then they decide what tools they need, they get the training in those tools, and they take little baby steps to begin with, and then they can expand and mature the program. But I think the most important thing is to get started, and there are resources out there that can help. I know out of the University of Michigan, there certainly are that can help the smaller and medium-sized companies, to address these things. And I want to say one advantage that the smaller companies may have is their program may be more agile. Now, you take a large program and a large company, introducing new things. They've got lots of resources, but there's a lot of things to change. There's a lot of people to train. It can be like, turning a battleship around, whereas a smaller company can be a bit more nimble and a bit more agile.
That's an optimistic thing to say. I appreciate that. I think Michigan OSHA also has a consultation activity
Yes,
and
yes,
ergonomists that can work with you as well. For you don't have
yeah,
to pay for it, so that's another
yes,
possible
yeah.
route to take. Now, I'm just going to ask your opinion on this one. You don't have to, but what do you think about the back belts that were all the rage and are seem to be coming back
Oh
again?
yeah, the back belts. There's a lot we can say about back belts. I remember back in the 1990s, and General Motors actually their uh, medical authority even issued a statement on back belts. Back belts, how a back belt works or how it's intended to work is it compresses the abdomen, and the theory is that it will buttress the spine when doing a lift. Now, the problem with that was in actual execution of it is that the lift may have asymmetric components. The back belt may not necessarily actually help with the lift. So there have been a number of studies that show, well, maybe in some cases a back belt will help. Oh, but in a lot of other cases, it doesn't. Also, a big concern with back belts was if I have this back belt on all the time, it could lead to deconditioning of some of my spinal muscles. So when I take the back belt off, I may be more prone to injury.
Oh,
So for those reasons, back belts weren't really recommended.
well,
Now
one
we get in.
salesperson told me it helped his golf game.
Well, and then sometimes the argument is, well, there's some weightlifters that use back belts, and
Right.
and they use back belts in a very specific way. They just don't put it on and do all their lifts with it. They're
Mm.
they're 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 very careful and how they use the back belt and part of their lifting routines. And back belts in industry have been more, oh, okay, well, here they are, go ahead, put them on. And then sometimes they may not fit a person very well. They may be uncomfortable. People may have them on, but they're not cinched up, so they're not really contributing to anything. So I'd say, no, let's not depend on back belts. Now, it's another thing if there's a compression bandage that is prescribed by a physician for somebody for a back issue. Okay, that's something else that's uh, different entirely.
So if we haven't already covered it, what do you think employers should avoid when creating a back injury prevention program?
That is a very good question. I think first of all, they should be inclusive as possible in who all they involve in it. They should not expect um, positive outcomes too quick. It's going to take a while for the program to work. So uh, 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 it needs to be nursed along, and people need to be trained. They need to get experience in what they're doing. They need examples. They need the time to make the program work.
That's a
Now,
good
I'd
point.
say other aspects of what employers should avoid is they should be open to new ideas, to new technologies. You know, avoid the not invented here syndrome. Sort of a thing that we see sometimes. Share information, see what other people are doing, examples of what has worked and what hasn't.
That's a really good point because I think one thing with the Michigan Safety Conference, smaller companies could talk to the big three or
Oh
other large
yeah,
companies
yeah,
and get an
yeah.
idea of, hey, did you guys ever try this? How did this work? Or get a program. So that's real valuable. We could do some networking like that.
Mhm.
So why is this topic important?
Well, again, it's important, like with the statistics that I mentioned before, that it affects so many people. It has a huge cost involved, a huge cost to individuals, to companies, to the national economy. And I think overall back injuries continue to be an issue with us. They continue to be studied by scientists and ergonomists. We continue to have tools that are being developed, better tools all the time that can assess a back injury risks. And I also look at back injuries, within a context of overall of musculoskeletal disorders, other injuries and illnesses, things like carpal tunnel syndrome, the issues with the upper extremity repetitive motion, shoulder injuries, knee injuries, all of those different things. We might start off on a program focusing on back injuries. And once we kind of have a handle on that, then we can look at the other injuries too.
Yeah, it's a good point.
And I have to, as I mentioned to start out with, um, we've been concerned primarily with the physical aspects of the task, the load. Where is it picked up from? What is that moment? The distance away from the body, the horizontal distance, how far it's carried, how much the push and pull is, et cetera, et cetera. There are other factors as well. We kind of touched on environmental factors, on personal factors. There are what are called psychosocial factors. And a lot of the research within the past 10 or 15 years has shown, well, that can be very significant too as a causative factor of some of these injuries and illnesses. Such factors, if workers are constantly working under time pressure, time stress, that can contribute to it. If workers are working alone, okay, if they don't have adequate interaction and supervision from their supervisors, that can be another aspect that could contribute to it. So there are those other factors involved. Now, we won't say really too much about those, but they are out there. They've got a lot of attention. Had a lot of attention from NIOSH, and I think we'll see more tools and ways for assessing and dealing with those types of stressors.
One argument I would use with management is maybe buying something to help with lifts or eliminate them.
Yeah,
They think at the expense of it, but like you pointed out, with 38% of these injuries are costing them a heck of a lot of money and
yeah.
downtime and
Oh,
productivity.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
actually, it's going to be cheaper in the long run if you could just
yeah.
make that case. I think we have to make
Right.
the dollars and cents case as well. So any final thoughts that I haven't got
Yeah,
from you yet,
yeah.
Mr. 40 years?
I'd say that again, a multi-pronged approach. Um, uh, Lifting jobs, manual handling jobs, need to be well designed. I mean, if we can eliminate them, if we can use mechanical handling assists, better job design, a lot of attention being paid to that right now in warehousing. Now, I've been on some calls looking at. I've been asked to sit in on some states looking at regulations related to airline baggage handling. And there's been a lot of good work in Europe that have essentially taken a lot of the more stressful aspects of those tasks out. Now, please understand, I'm not talking about automating all these jobs away. I'm talking about mechanical, because the human is a very important aspect of the job, can make judgments, can do things that the machines can't do. And that includes AI. And so it's supplementing that worker, making it easier for the worker by being able to mechanize that job and maybe automate some other functions that are truly hazardous.
Oh, we don't have time to get into it today. I might have to try this again, but construction, ergonomics and
Oh
construction, when
yeah.
you think about all the challenges of what they have to do and the
Yes.
work sites and the type of things they have to lift, carry, and so that's a whole other discussion.
Oh, that is. You're going to find a lot of variation with construction and the types of tasks that they
That
do,
is tough.
and interest. It's interesting, how it varies seasonally.
Yeah, right.
Throughout the job, working in summer, working in winter, all of those. Now there's been some research into the area of, well, how can we really better assess in jobs like that, and that would also include agriculture. How can we better assess the risk to the workers involved with
Right.
those jobs? So we've got to not just do a one-off approach, but look how that risk varies, week to week, month to month, season to season
Right.
to get a better handle of the risks
Yeah, I think
involved.
people don't even think about the environment as one of the
That's
things.
right.
So, okay. Michigan Safety Conference exists to champion a culture of safety and health that empowers individuals and organizations to protect people, preserve the environment, and promote well-being. Okay, I'm convinced much of what we do as humans has a tendency to impact our future physical well-being. We've talked about a few ideas to help us not find that fate inevitable. So I'd like to thank Dr. Robert Fox. He can be reached at Dr. Bob Fox 56. There were 56 of you at gmail.com.
Well,
I'd
that
also
that
like
was the year I was born, 1956. So I'm giving away my age here.
Oh, I see. I'd also like to thank our sponsor this month, Cults Excavating. If you have any questions about this podcast, the Michigan Safety Conference, you'd like to be a guest or sponsor our podcast, information can be found on our website at michsafetyconference.org. Thank you for listening to Safety Spectrum. This is Sheila Ide.